Yesterday, we had the UFC Saudi Arabia fight night go down. Overall, it was a nice looking card on paper. I'd say for the most part, it delivered, a stinker here or there, but I think for the most part, 4 out of the 5 main card fights were exciting. In today's video, I'm going to be playing matchmaker for all the fighters on the main card, so all 10 of them, just talking about who I think they should be booked against next. Would love to hear your thoughts down below. If you agree, disagree, let me hear it down below in the comments. But we have to start off with, pretty much the star of the show here, Nassourdine Imavov, someone who, had been putting together a nice win streak at middleweight, but this really just stamped him as a guy really competing in the top of this weight class. And I kind of feel like he should be waiting for a title shot. Now, I don't think this is the ideal situation. You don't want guys just sitting around waiting to fight for the title. But I think that's kind of the result here of the UFC really just mismanaging the middleweight weight class. You gave Sean an undeserving title shot, right? He lost to DDP. He had not defended the belt a single time. You give him like a shot at Paulo Costa. He has an underwhelming win, right? Like he wins the decision. It's not a fun fight. It's not a super dominant performance. It wasn't just anything all that spectacular. And then you give him the title shot over Khamzat Chimaev, who was very deserving, just finished Robert Whittaker in the first round, just a dominant, super impressive win. So now you have Khamzat Chimaev sitting around, and you've already kind of set this precedent where Chimaev had the big win, the big finish over someone at the top of the weight class. Now he's getting to sit around, which I do think he should get to do because I think he's earned the title shot. So why would Imavov not get the same treatment here, right? Looking at the current middleweight rankings, you have DDP as the champion, Strickland's ranked number 1, then Izzy is all the way up at number 2, Khamzat at number 3. So with this win, Imavov is probably going to move up to number 2. At worst, he's going to move up, right below Khamzat at number 3. And so there's really not another win that could get him up there into title contention because the champ is fighting number 1, Izzy's going to move down, and then Khamzat's getting the next title shot. Maybe if the DDP Strickland loser takes minimal damage, then you book Imavov. But overall, I feel like the UFC has just kind of created a not so great situation here. Letting Sean get that title shot, which in my opinion was undeserved. And now you just have a line for the title shot, which is never great. I just think the worst title shots are the ones where you're just automatically looking towards the next fight. And I feel like that's where we're at here with Chimaev because I don't really care about this DDP Strickland 2 fight because I feel like the winner of that is just going to get steamrolled by Khamzat. And then it's all right, well, who's Khamzat going to be fighting next? And we're already going to be looking forward to the potential Imavov matchup. So maybe he fights the DDP Strickland loser, but I feel like he should just be waiting around at this point. Then on the other side, for Israel Adesanya, honestly don't really have a matchup for him. I think he should retire. He has lost 4 of his last 5. He has lost 3 in a row. And you could have made the case right before that he had lost 3 out of 4, but they were all against champions, very, very high levels of competition. He just lost to number 5. Now, Imavov is not some sort of scrub. He's not some sort of bum. I mean, he might, go on, challenge for the title. Maybe he somehow wins the title, although I don't think he beats Khamzat Chimaev. But I feel like Izzy's not the type of fighter who's going to hang around, to be a gatekeeper, someone who's not actually competing for the belt. And I think you just look at the way these fights have gone. The chin seems to be fading. He's more hittable than ever before. He's had a legendary career. I don't think we need to see some long decline. Now, maybe he wants to come back for one more fight, go out on a win. Honestly, I don't really want to see it. Not that I don't want to see him get a win, but I think when you try to play around like that, a lot of times it just leads to a very, very steep slide because they're still going to put him in there against someone in the top 15. There's also just not a ton of super fun striking matchups at middleweight, so I'd prefer to see him retire. I just think he's too good to hang around, not competing for the belt. Now, looking at the fighters in the co-main event, going to start off with the winner here, Michael Venum Page. And I think a lot of people, assuming he's going back down to 170, which I do think he will, I think a lot of people are going to have him booked against probably a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I actually want to see him take on Colby Covington. So he just picked up a clean 30-27 win over a very solid striker up a weight class. Do expect and would like to see him back down to 170, and he's currently ranked number 15. Now, he is coming off a loss at 170, but He's a big name. I'm sure he's getting paid well. They're going to be putting him in like fun, big matchups. So I don't see him fighting outside the rankings. Plus, it was a very close loss to Ian Gary, who just had a great performance against Shavkat. So like I said, I think a lot of people are going to be looking at these striker versus striker matchups. But you look at some of the strikers ranked around him, Prates, Jeff Neal, both coming off of W's. I think this Colby matchup is interesting because Colby's someone who's going to go out. He's going to build the fight. I think on paper, maybe people think this is a bad matchup. I actually think of all the guys in the top 15 at welterweight, if MVP was going to have like one of his signature highlights, I think it could come against a Colby Covington who has looked very washed. He looked terrible in the Leon Edwards fight. He was absolutely beat up by Joaquin Buckley. It just doesn't seem like he has the ability to push the same pace. He goes in with sloppy shots. And so like MVP going in with a knee, the chin seems to be failing Covington a little bit as of late. I just think MVP really could get a spectacular finish against him. And like maybe Colby turns back the clock against a fan favorite, and then you can put him up in another big fight. I just think either way, whoever wins, I think, you're building their star power. And at some point, like MVP is going to have to fight someone who's not just going to stand up with him. And I think I'd rather see him be able to strike against someone who's maybe not as great on the feet, but could test his wrestling defense versus like an Ian Gary matchup or some of these other strikers where they might just try to clinch him, which just leads to a very unfan-friendly matchup. So MVP versus Colby Covington is my pick. Like I said, I think a lot of people are going to throw out the Wonder Boy fight. They just don't seem like they want to fight each other, and I have no interest in making a fight if both guys don't actually want to face off. And then for the loser of that co-main event, I have Shara Bullet taking on Roman Kopylov. That was Shara Bullet's first career loss. He's ranked number 14, probably should be fighting down coming off a loss. I honestly don't think his stock takes a huge hit from this. Now, I'm not someone who thought that Shara Bullet would be like a future champ. I feel like he's had very favorable matchmaking. I just don't know if his grappling is going to be up to par. And even against some of the top strikers, like I don't know if he's outstriking them, but I'm really not going to like ding him too much for this. MVP is just such a weird matchup. And I just think it's almost impossible to beat MVP if you are not clinching him, making it like a gross, grimy fight, because he's impossible to train for. He closes distance so quickly. He's not pushing a crazy pace. So he's the one with all these huge moments, and you just have to like follow him around. It's a very tough matchup for a pure striker, even though you want to say like, oh, he's a pure striker versus another pure striker. It's just a very odd matchup for guys. So I'm not going to ding him too much here. For Roman Kopylov, he has back-to-back wins coming off that like controversial KO over Chris Curtis, but it was still a very good performance, even if that went to decision. He has won 6 of his last 7, 5 finishes. This is striker versus striker. He's definitely more of like a traditional striker, not like an MVP type. I think Shara Bullet, Roman Kopylov is a very, very fun matchup. Then looking at the heavyweights here, honestly, a fight that looked like it was bound to just end in one round ends up going to like an underwhelming decision. For Sergei Pavlovich here, I think he should fight Cyril Gane next. He's ranked number 4. He just beat number 9. And you just look at the guys ahead of him. Obviously, he's not fighting John Jones. He's not fighting Tom Aspinall. And then you are looking at Cyril Gane and you're looking at Volkov. So he already had the loss to Volkov. Don't need to see that one again. Gane is coming off the win, in quotes, against Volkov. And you look at Sergey here, he went from 5 straight first-round knockouts to 1-2 in his last 3 with a decision win over someone that he probably would have nuked if this was like 2 years ago. But I think the Gane matchup is interesting. It's fresh. It's striker versus striker. Cyril Gane's going to, go out there. He's going to throw volume. I think one way or the other, this is going to be a fun fight. Either Sergey's going to find the knockout or Cyril Gane's just going to put a pace on him, jab his face off, land a ton of kicks. I think Gane can do more to kind of force the issue here with Sergey, where with Jairzinho, he could clip him once around, and then Jairzinho just wasn't going to be able to do enough to kind of overcome that. I think for Cyril Gane, you're really going to have to hurt him if you're going to win this fight, because you're not going to go out there and outpoint a guy like Cyril Gane. And then for the loser of that heavyweight matchup, Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Derek Lewis. This is a fight that seems like it should have already happened. It seems like it has happened like 10 times. But it's just 2 big power punchers, number 9 taking on number 10. This is the fight to make. We should finally get it. Let's not mess around here. I don't want to see Rozenstruik and Lewis fighting some like random heavyweight grapplers. Let's just get them in the fights where they're going to go out. They're going to throw bombs. I think Derek Lewis is going to bring the fight, right? He's going to charge in, throw huge punches. That is the fight I want to see. Then looking at the bantamweights here, very fun fight. A little sloppy at the end, but fun fight between Vinicius Oliveira and Said Nurmagomedov. I thought the winner of this matchup should get a crack at the top 15. Still feel that way, which is why I have Vinicius Oliveira taking on Kyler Phillips. Think he has earned a ranked opponent. He's 3-0 in the UFC, back-to-back very impressive wins over Said Nurmagomedov and Ricky Simone. Kyler Phillips is currently ranked number 12, and he is the only fighter from number 12 through 15 who is coming off a loss. So those other guys in the top 15 coming off of wins. I think in an ideal world, they're fighting up or they're fighting someone else ranked, right? Kind of how it works. You're at the bottom of the rankings, you lose, you fight outside, you're in the rankings, you should stay around in the rankings. So Kyler's coming off that loss. These are two fun, creative strikers. I just think this is a really fun matchup, and I think it makes sense given where both guys are at in their careers. And then on the other side, we have Said Nurmagomedov. I think he should be taking on Daniel Marcos. He looked really good in round 1, and then it seemed like towards the end of round 2, like he was just completely gassed. I still think he's in like the bantamweight top 20 area. He's really just been like hovering around a shot at the top 15. And I don't think this loss like totally ruins it. Daniel Marcos kind of also in the same area. He is 17-0, 4-0 in the UFC. Both these guys are primarily strikers. I think the winner should still get a crack at the top 15. I think they're still both in contention there. So Said Nurmagomedov, Daniel Marcos seems like a fun matchup to me. And then the last matchup here, the first one on the main card, the winner for Ziam, I think he should get a shot at the top 15. I'm booking him against Jalen Turner. I think Dana White said the same thing. This is 5 straight W's at lightweight, 7 of his last 8, and back-to-back very impressive wins. Had the knockout over Matt Frivola, and then a 30-27 performance over Mike Davis, who I was very high on heading into this matchup. Jalen Turner is ranked number 13. He has lost 3 of his last 4. Obviously, very good competition. Gamrot, Hooker, Moicano. He's been on a long layoff here. Last fight was April 13th. I think that was the UFC 300 card. So he needs to fight back or probably out of the rankings. I think Ziam is a very deserving guy to get a shot at the rankings. Both pretty big for this weight class. Tall, lean. I think it would be a nice fight. Honestly, not super sure I'd be super high on how Ziam does or, his chances of winning, but the top 15 at lightweight's tough. I do think he's earned a shot. And then the loser of this matchup, Mike Davis. I think he should fight Thiago Moises. Honestly, just like a weird, kind of disappointing performance from him. He had his moments, but the strategy, the first round, were just very odd. He's still 4-2 in the UFC, won 4 of his last 5. You have Thiago Moises, who is coming off a win against Trey Ogden, but he's 4-4 in his last 8. He's kind of had this like path where he's going to lose against the really, really good fighters, and then he's going to beat up on some of the, lesser, like, bottom-tier UFC guys. Trey Ogden was kind of in the middle of that, and he ended up getting a solid win. I think Mike Davis is probably, like, a little bit above the level of Trey Ogden, but probably the Mike Davis, before we saw him fight in Saudi Arabia. I think both these guys are well-rounded. The big question is just going to be, is Mike Davis going to have another long layoff? Had a pretty nasty cut. It was a grueling fight. He's only had 6 UFC fights in almost 6 years in the promotion. So this is assuming he tries to establish like some sort of activity. I would book him against Thiago Moises. I think that's a nice matchup at lightweight. So that's going to wrap it up for my main card matchmaking. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Who would you be booking these guys against? Let me hear it down below. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.